God, we thank you this morning for your name, for a name that reigns high above any other name, and a name that when shouted, the mountains can tremble. God, your name is just so powerful. Redeemer, helper, Father, Savior, and friend. God, your name just means all of these things. And we're thankful. We're just thankful, God, that you're only one breath away. God, you're our helper. You're our Redeemer and our friend. And we just love you so much. In your name we pray. Amen. Thanks for singing. Y'all can have a seat.
Crosspoint, it's good to be here. I'm super excited to preach today. I always enjoy it when Pastor Ray is gone. Getting the opportunity to preach here. I am excited. What we're going to be looking at today is we're going to be keeping in the kind of our theme of where we've been, and that's in the Old Testament. We're going to be in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 7. We're going to be reading several verses, but really just looking, zeroing in, focusing on one of them. But before we do, I kind of want to just tell you where this message came from. If I'm being honest with you, this message is deeply, deeply personal for me. See, a lot of times whenever you sit down to study and prepare for a message, maybe there's that verse that just really stands out into your mind, and you begin studying it, and you feel like maybe that's what God is wanting you to do, so you preach on that. If you're a youth pastor, a lot of times you just preach what the pastor tells you to. Hey, preach on this subject, so that's what you do. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about it, but then there's those times that it's so personal for you, you can't not but speak on that topic, and that's what this is for me today. This message is literally been on my heart. It's been on my mind for quite a while, which typically means it's going to be a pretty long sermon, so just go ahead and get comfortable now. But honestly, this sermon today was birthed out of my own struggles, my own setbacks, my own disappointments, my own set of trials, and everything else. And then the one main lesson that I learned through that time. I never really kept it much of a secret. A lot of you already know, but for the past 6 months, I've gone through some pretty serious, pretty unforeseen, just annoying health issues. Things that just weren't fun to deal with. They're all beginning to get worked out now, so we're good now. But there for a while, no one could really tell me what was going on. It was one thing after another. It was one issue after another. One doctor visit after another doctor visit. ER call after ER call, which means, hey, bill after bill. Who's feeling me right now, right? And so all of this is beginning to happen. It's going on. Usually I was left with more questions than I was getting answers. Seems like every single day during that time of my life, I was brought with a new trial every single day, a new pain, a new way of just trying to figure out how I was going to get through that day, fulfill my job, fulfill my duties, and just go on. It was a hard time. It was a difficult time. It was issues that I would never guess that a 29-year-old would have to deal with. That's right, I'm turning 30 this year. But through this time, I was struggling physically. Not just physically, though. I was struggling emotionally. And if I'm being 100% real with you, I was struggling spiritually. To the point that if I'm being honest, I was mad. I was upset. Even at times annoyed at God. Because I could not understand why in the world I was going through what I was facing. I mean, here I am, I'm trying to do his will for my life. I'm trying to serve him. I'm trying to do everything right. And here I am, it seems like every single day brings with it a new trial. I could not understand what in the world was going on, so I was upset. I was upset that my lovely wife, who was always there for me, was having to walk through those moments with me, and then felt utterly helpless because there was literally nothing that she could do to help. I couldn't understand why God would have me go through that. And again, being 100% real with you, I still don't understand it. I still don't get it. I still don't have an answer for it. But however, where I'm at now is I'm okay with it. You see, I don't have to understand. One thing I learned is I don't have to understand it to accept it. I don't have to always understand what God may want us to walk through, what God may want us to do to be able to trust him through it and then get through it. So what made the difference? What caused the change of attitude in my mind? What was it that sparked this new atmosphere for me? What was it? One day I was doing my Bible reading. I remember the day. It was May 21st. The only reason I remember the day is I journal, and that's also our anniversary. So brownie points for me for remembering that day, right? It was May 21st. I was doing my Bible reading, and I ran across 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12. Now look, I've read this verse before, and I've always loved the verse. I like this story. I always have. It wasn't new to me. It wasn't something that is just, bam, brand new, and I'm like, wow, no. I've always known about it, but that day I read that verse, it literally hit me like a ton of bricks. It was almost like I was reading it for the very first time. And so ever since that day, literally for over 2 months, I've been studying this verse. I've been studying the story. And what I have found has been literally life-changing for me in every single area. It's been great. So this morning, what I simply want to do today is I want to look at this passage significantly, especially just that one verse as we get into it. And hopefully it's going to mean something to you like it does to me. Maybe it's not going to mean as much to you right now, but maybe in the future, whenever you go through your dark time, whenever you go through your time of questioning or maybe anger or whatever it is that you don't have the answers, maybe then this message will pop up in your mind and it'll be a blessing to you then. But this one verse I want us to understand is incredibly powerful. There's quite a bit of history behind this verse, and it has an absolutely incredible meaning. We don't have time to actually go into the entire history of this verse, nor do I believe it's necessary to recount the entire story. But I do want to give us some background behind the verse, as I believe it's going to help us understand it. I believe it's going to help it be more impactful and life-changing for us. So we're in the Old Testament, like we said, and so that automatically means that this was written directly to the nation of Israel. Okay, this was written directly to them. They are God's chosen people. And this is one of the darkest periods in their history. During this time, one of their major enemies, the Philistines, we always hear a lot about them. The Philistines, they came to the Israelites, and they did battle near a place named Ebenezer. Now, at this place named Ebenezer, whenever the Philistines and the Israelites came together and they battled, Israelites were defeated and about 4,000 men were killed on the battlefield. Now, needless to say, the elders of Israel, the priests, everybody, they could not understand what was going on. I mean, literally, by name, by definition, they are God's chosen people. And God just allowed them to get defeated. What is going on? No one understood it. So the leaders of Israel, they got together and like, you know what, we have a plan. Eli was the priest at the time. He had 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas. There's a boy name for you there. Any of you are thinking about that? And the Bible tells us that their 2 sons were wicked. And they got the idea that, you know what, the people just need encouraging. And so they said, we're going to take the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant, it represents the presence of God. It represents the power of God. And they said, you know what? They just need some encouragement. So we're going to bring the Ark and we're going to take it into the camp of the Israelites. They're all going to be excited. And because of that, we're going to win the victory. Their plan appeared to work. For whenever they brought the Ark into the camp, we read that the Israelites shouted with such a great shout. They were so happy it says that the earth shook. There's a problem with this. These people began placing their faith, their trust in an object, in something, instead of placing their faith and trust in someone. They began to place their faith in the magic of the ark instead of in the majesty of the Almighty. And because of that, they were not successful. They were literally placing their faith in a physical object that they could look, that they could touch, that they could feel, instead of the person in whom that object represented. They were literally treating the ark like a rabbit's foot, like a good luck charm is all that it was for them. Now, the Philistines, they knew the story of the ark. And whenever they heard that the Israelites brought it into their camp, they got a little scared. But they said, you know what? We're still going to fight. We're still going to go to battle. Now, call that brave, call it stupid, I don't know. But they said, we're still going to battle. And so they did. And not only was Israel defeated, Israel was slaughtered. This time, not 4,000 people, not 10, not 15, not 20, 30,000 men, soldiers, were killed in that battle. The Ark of the Covenant was captured. It was carried away to the land of the Philistines. The two sons of Eli the priest were also killed. When the news got back to Eli the priest, he heard the news. He was so destroyed. We read that he fell off his chair, broke his neck, and he died. Phinehas' wife was pregnant, and she went into premature labor, gave birth to the son, but she died in childbirth, named the son Ichabod, which means the glory of God has departed. It was a devastating time in the nation of Israel, possibly the darkest point in their history. Now, the Philistines, they eventually returned the Ark of the Covenant back to the Israelites. That's a whole nother story in of itself. They found out it was more of a curse to them than it was a trophy of war. And so the ark was returned, and it remained in that person's house for the next 20 years. During this time, Israel was defeated. They were in mourning because they literally felt that God had abandoned them, is where they were. And this is right where we pick up in our story in 1 Samuel chapter 7. So I call your attention now to verse 3. Then Samuel said to all the people of Israel, if you want to return to the Lord with all your hearts, get rid of your foreign gods and your image of Ashtaroth. Turn your hearts to the Lord and obey him alone. Then he will rescue you from the Philistines. So the Israelites got rid of their images of Baal and Ashtaroth and worshiped only the Lord. Then Samuel told them, gather all of Israel to Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord for you. So they gathered at Mizpah, and in a great ceremony drew water from a well and poured it out before the Lord. They also went without food all day and confessed that they had sinned against the Lord. It was at Mizpah that Samuel became Israel's judge. When the Philistine rulers heard that Israel had gathered at Mizpah, they mobilized their army and advanced. The Israelites were badly frightened when they learned that the Philistines were approaching. Don't stop pleading with the Lord our God to save us from the Philistines, they begged Samuel. So Samuel took a young lamb and offered it to the Lord as a whole burnt offering. He pleaded with the Lord to help Israel, and the Lord answered him. Just as Samuel was sacrificing the burnt offering, the Philistines arrived to attack Israel. But the Lord spoke with a mighty voice of thunder from heaven that day, and the Philistines were thrown into such a confusion that the Israelites defeated them. The men of Israel chased them from Mizpah to a place below Beth-kar, slaughtering them all along the way. And here it is. Samuel then took a large stone, placed it between the town of Mizpah and Jeshanah. He named it Ebenezer, which means the stone of help. For he said, up to this point, the Lord has helped us. I don't know about you, but I love this story. I mean, when I read it, I just want to take a step back and be like, oh, snap. I mean, did God just speak like thunder and then kill a bunch of people? I mean, it's an amazing story. Here we run by a guy by the name of Samuel. Now, Samuel is incredibly important to the history of Israel. Samuel was the last judge before they went to kings, but he was the first of the prophets to the people. Samuel had one goal only, and that was to get these people back right with God, restore their relationship with Jesus. He had conditions for them. We just read them. Israelites, they met those conditions. So Samuel had them all gathered together at Mizpah. He said, all right, now that you've met these conditions, you've repented, I want us all to gather together. We're going to have a little prayer meeting. Now, while they were there having this prayer meeting, the Philistines heard about it. They thought that they were gathering at Mizpah so that they can organize themselves and do battle with them. So the Philistines immediately went into attack mode. They went right up into Mizpah. They attacked Israel. Now, before they got there, Israelites caught wind that, hey, the Philistines are coming. As I'm sure you can imagine, they were scared. They were terrified. I mean, you can't blame them, right? They don't have the best track record with these people. The last time they met, 30,000 people were killed, and they went into mourning for the next 20 plus years. And so you can imagine how scared they were. They begged Samuel, don't stop praying for us. Samuel didn't. In fact, he made an offering to God as a sign of worship. He cried out to God, and God answered him. We read that while Samuel was making that offering, while Samuel was praying while he was praying, the Philistines were gathering together to attack Israel. But what happened? I'll tell you what happened. God showed up. Not only did God show up, but God fought for Israel that day. He confused the mess out of those Philistines to the point that they were badly defeated, that they weren't just defeated, they were slaughtered, and the men of Israel followed them all the way down to the next city, and the next city, slaughtering them as they went. Israel was defeated. Now, this is a great story. This story alone gets me excited, but I want to focus on something else. I want to focus on what happened after the deliverance. I want to focus and look at what happened after Israelites defeated the Philistines, verse 12. Look at it one more time with me, verse 12. It says, Samuel then took a large stone. He placed it between the towns of Mizpah and Jeshanah. He named it Ebenezer, which means the stone of help. For he said, up to this point, the Lord has helped us. Now, this may not seem like a big deal. Just seems like some guy setting up a bunch of stones, which really wasn't unusual back then. They did it all the time. We read Abraham did it, Isaac did it, Moses. They all did those things. To us, it would almost be the equivalent to building an altar, building a memorial, or maybe even putting up a stone to signify family land or something special like that. But this stone, Ebenezer, was set up to commemorate a great victory that God had just given them over their long-term enemies, the Philistines. It was a sign of triumph, and it was a sign of victory. It was a tool that God wanted to use, that Samuel wanted to use to spark their memory of where they were, how they tried to figure it out on their own, how they tried to take matters into their own hands and trust an object instead of trusting the person, but yet where they are now. It was a victory stone. It was a triumph stone. You can think of it in the ways of a championship trophy. But get this. Samuel didn't just set up a stone. Again, that wasn't uncommon. That was nothing special. I mean, it was special, but not out of the ordinary. He didn't just set up a stone. No, my man named it Ebenezer. That is what makes this stone significant. The name. You see, this name only occurs 3 times in the entire Old Testament. 2 out of those 3 times, it is used to refer to a specific place, a specific incident. But the most important use, the most significant, the most impactful use of the word Ebenezer is right here. You see, whenever we translate the word Ebenezer, and as we read it in our English Bible, it says Ebenezer, the stone of help. That's just proper English. That's how we would say it. You see it there? But yet if we translate it directly from the Hebrew, which is what it was written in, into English, it would actually read just like you've been seeing it on the screen, and that is Ebenezer, stone of the help. You see the difference? It's very slight. All it is just a different use of that definite article, the. But the different use of that one small word, the, drastically changes its meaning. Drastically changes the impact. You see, to say Ebenezer, the stone of help, puts the emphasis on the stone. It makes the stone as the subject. It makes the stone, this physical object, something that you can touch, something that you can feel, something that you can literally put your hands on. It puts all of the attention on that, on a specific event, a time in history. However, whenever you say stone of the help, all of a sudden, the emphasis is no longer on a physical object, but rather the emphasis is now on who that object represents. Now the emphasis is on the help. The help becomes the subject. You see, this stone is not a stone of a specific incident of help. Rather, this stone is a glimpse for us in the New Testament, and it is a direct picture of Jesus Christ. I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little excited. I might start preaching here in a second. This is what I want you to get. Your help is not the stone. Your help is who the stone represents. The stone is an object. The stone is simply something that stands as a memorial. It is who represents the stone. That is your help. Your help is Jesus. He himself is your Ebenezer. He himself is your stone of help. Now this just makes sense because Jesus is often referred to in the Old Testament as the stone, as the cornerstone, as we sang last week. In the New Testament, Jesus is always referred to as the rock. These descriptions are fitting because he is stable, he is safe, he is secure, he is strong, and the help that he offers is 100% personal. So again, he is your stone of help. So this may not mean anything to you right now. But if you have ever gone through a dark time in your life, and I know all of us have, you've ever gone through anything to where you just absolutely, why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? What is God's purpose through this? There is something in our life that we can look back to. Literally raise our Ebenezer and say, it's okay. Because up to this point, God has brought me this far. Now look, I know in a room this size, every single person can probably tell me stories of how you have been told that you can't. That there's no way that this could happen for you. Maybe it's like me and it was in relation to health problems, that there's nothing that they can do. You just deal with it. Maybe it was financial stresses. Maybe it was relationship issues. Whatever it is, you were told there's no remedy for you. There's no way out for you. But then Jesus shows up. And Jesus begins to fight for you. And you can look back at your life again. Raise your Ebenezer. You can praise Jesus. All because up to this point, God has helped you. Or simply put, so far, so good. You have no doubt in your life faced many enemies. You have gone through many battles in your life through the years, but Jesus, the stone of your help, he has always stepped in. He has always fought for you. Think back to all those hard times. Think back to all of those dark days. Hey, maybe you're going through an attack right now. I don't know. Maybe you're going through a dark time right now. I can tell you though, no matter what it is, no matter where you are, you have an Ebenezer who can get you out of it. Jesus, the stone of help, is there for you. He has always been there for you, and he will be your victory. Crosspoint, get this. Jesus has never failed us, and he doesn't intend to start now. You see, what is going on here is ultimately Samuel, he redefined this name, which took guts. He's redefining what this name means. Remember our story at the very beginning? The first time the Israelites and the Philistines met, 4,000 people were killed. Remember where that took place? It took place at a town, if you will, called Ebenezer. It was a place that marked defeat. It was a place that literally marked a downward spiral for this entire nation for the next 20 plus years. When people heard the name Ebenezer in Israel, they probably shuddered a little bit. When they heard the name Ebenezer, it immediately put a bad taste in their mouth. It was defeat, not victory. And so what Samuel is doing here is actually pretty genius. He is personally trying to get Israel to think of their past, to think of how they failed on their own, how they tried to figure it out on their own, where they used to be. For us, he's trying to get us to think of where we were, what we used to be, all the times that we have messed up throughout our past. And then Samuel says, you know what? As you're there thinking of that defeat, as you're there thinking about your struggles and that horrible dark time, he says, you know what? Why don't you just go ahead and forget all of that? I can see Samuel as this is playing out in his mind. I see him going over to this stone. He's like, no, that won't do. Going over to this stone, that won't do. Yeah, that one's big enough. And so he begins to carry it over. I don't know, maybe it's heavy. Maybe he needs a little bit of help. And he carries it over to this place. And then he begins to look back over the children of Israel. And he says, all right, whenever you hear the name Ebenezer, now you think of defeat. You think of struggle. You think of how you failed. You think of whenever you thought God let you down. He says, but now, and he sets this stone up. He says, now, this is your Ebenezer. You no longer think about defeat. Now you think about victory because God just delivers you. You no longer think about your past. Now you think about your future and how God has always been there for you. Because up to this point, God has led you this far. What does it mean? What is the significance of this? Think about this. How many times have we walked out on God? How many times have we made him promises that we either never intended on keeping or we failed miserably in keeping? How many times have we just messed up? I'm going to go out on a limb here and speak for all of us and say a whole bunch. But who has been there for us through it all? Jesus Christ, our Ebenezer. No matter how many times we fail him, no matter how many times we walk out on God, he is always there for us. He's actually made us that promise in Hebrews 13:5. It says, for God said, I will never fail you. I will never abandon you. Why? Because he is the stone of help for us. He is stable, he is solid, he is secure, he is safe. So the question is, why then do we fail him? When you think about it, it really doesn't make much sense. You see, the meaning of the name Ebenezer, the stone of help, up to this point, the Lord has helped us. We need to understand this does not only refer to our past or present circumstances. Rather, it gives us hope. It gives us security for our future as well. This doesn't just say, you know what, God has let me out of my past. He's helping me currently. No, it is our promise for the future that no matter what we may go through, no matter what we may face in the future, God is still going to be there for us. Look, again, as Samuel is redefining this name, he makes the point, we've counted on God in the past. We know he's active in the present. Because of this, we can trust him for our future. In other words, God hasn't brought you this far to simply leave you now. Can I tell you the moment in my own life when I realized this? The moment I began to understand not what, but who my Ebenezer was and what he has always done for me. All of my present issues didn't seem so bad anymore. No matter what I was going through, it didn't seem so big. In fact, compared to God, they all seemed pretty trivial, pretty small. And now every single day, whenever I wake up, I make it a point to remember who my Ebenezer is and how amazing he is and how I know great things can happen through him. In our story, Samuel puts up this stone. Philistines did not cross the Israelites' border again, ever, with any sort of success, that is. They lost a great deal of their power. We read that God continued to fight for Israel as they went on to regain everything they lost from the Philistines. So this morning, here's my prayer, my desire, that each one of us, including myself, will wake up every single day and walk in the truth of who our Ebenezer is. That every single day that we will wake up, slow down, stop for a while, think about everything God has done for us, and realize in complete honesty that up to this point, God has helped us. Up to this point, God has been there. One of my favorite songs ever since I was a teenager has always been the hymn, "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing." Several verses to this song, I believe a couple of them really tie all of this together. It says, "Here I raise my Ebenezer. Hither by thy great help I've come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wonder, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord. Take and seal it. Seal it for thy courts above. See, what this song does is it confesses the truth that it is our natural response to fail God. It's our natural response to let him down, to wander away, but yet every time God is there for us. He's our constant. He's our stone. He's our Ebenezer. And he'll always see us through. That's our encouragement. So one question this morning. Do you know who your Ebenezer is? Do you need to grasp this idea? Maybe there are some things in your life that you need to change. Maybe you need to rearrange some things to begin to fully trust and rest in God. Because at the end of the day, let me tell you, I give you this one promise. No matter what it is, at the end of the day, God's got this. It's up to this point, the Lord has helped us. We don't always do this, but Q is actually going to sing that hymn for us. Come Thou Fount. And during this time, my wife and I are going to be over here. If anyone would like prayer, we'll be there and we'll be happy to do that. What we really want to do is we want to make this stage, we just want to turn it into an altar. If God has spoken to your heart in any way this morning and you want to just make a commitment that God, from this day forward, I'm going to make it a point every day. I'm going to raise my Ebenezer, and I'm going to remember that up to this point, no matter what I'm going through, up to this point, you've always been there for me. God, change my attitude. Would you do that this morning? Make a commitment that we're going to raise our Ebenezer. Heads bowed, eyes closed. Go into this time.
If you guys would stand with us. your heart this morning that you'd like to pray about, feel free to come down and pray with Chase, or just feel free to kneel here at the altar.
Of mercy, never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mountain fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I've come. Oh, by thy good pleasure, safely to arrive at home. Jesus saw me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God, interposed his precious blood. He rescued me from danger. Grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness, like a feather, bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. All that I adore your name. Above all else, to my heart to sing your praise. Above all else, I adore your name. Above all else, to my heart to sing your praise, the highest praise, the loudest praise.
Guys, let's go to the Lord in prayer this morning. God, thank you so much for being our Ebenezer. God, it's all about you. So we thank you for your strength in our lives. Thank you for your guidance in our lives. Help us to lean into that and not our own will, not our own strength this morning. May we make some decisions this morning that would guide us for the rest of our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. Guys, thank you for being here today. Look, if you've got a t-shirt or a hat that you paid for, they're back on the table. They're here. See you next week, same time, same place.
My hope exhausted, you will be my strength. When my mind says I'm not